Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. We're wrapping up the latest trilogy. I shouldn't say latest trilogy. The latest trilogy we decided to cover from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, of course, you saw by the title there, kids, who we're talking about, what movie we're talking about this time. It's old Shellhead himself, Mr. Stark, good old Iron Man 3. Now, I will say from the jump, this movie perhaps doesn't get the best reviews. I don't know if it's quite as bad as part two. I've never really compared, apples to apples or whatever. But I don't know how the world in general feels. I can tell you how I feel, and I'm sure Phil's going to tell you how he feels as well. And we'll see at the end of the episode how many of you guys think we're right. How many of you guys think maybe we missed the mark? We shall see. I'll tell you that from a distance, I'm watching again for the not second time, but second time in the past 2 days anyway. I'm entertained by it. Is it the best Marvel movie I've ever seen? The answer is no. Shocker. However, I love the cast. I love them to death, and that always colors my judgment. I think the director's on his game. I think it's shot well, and I think, like, I'm giving my closing arguments here, kids. But anyway, I digress. I don't know that it's the dumpster fire that some people perhaps believe it is. I certainly don't think it's the dumpster fire that part two is. I think Phil's got a couple of hot takes on this movie, and I think this is what led us to do the Iron Man trilogy to begin with, is discussing, Iron Man movies during the midst of other episodes. And finally, off mic one day, I said, dude, let's just do the trilogy, man. So it just made sense, and we're going to get into it now here today, kids. Iron Man 3. Phil, how long has it been since you've seen Iron Man 3, and how did it hit you this time upon watching it again?
This is the first time that I haven't watched the movie right before we reviewed it because I watch it so often.
Good answer.
I watch Iron Man quite often. Matter of fact, the last time I really sat down and watched it was Christmas. I watched it Christmas Eve. It's a Christmas movie in my opinion. But
I'm with that.
But yeah, I am here to bring my Iron Man 3 agenda to this podcast. I not only think that Iron Man 3, not only is Iron Man 3 my favorite Iron Man movie, I think that it's the best Iron Man movie of the entire trilogy.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt him. Tell me more.
I just think that it is. There's just certain things about it that I just really enjoy. I really enjoy the action of it. I really enjoy Robert Downey Jr. working with Shane Black again. I don't know. It's just so many things I love about it. And, to be honest, I think the fact that some people hate it has made me like it even more.
Right.
It's just become one of those things where I liked it when it came out, and I liked it even more every time I watched it. And every time somebody kind of comes and goes, it's horrible, it's this, and it's like, no, it's actually a pretty good movie. Yeah, I would absolutely argue that out of all of the Iron Man movies, it has the best third act. It has some of the best action. It has some of the best scenes with just practical action scenes, none of the CG stuff in it. I mean, come on, just name me anything out of the first Iron Man movies that is done as well with practically as that rescue scene out of the airplane.
That we'll get there, but man, that's what a dynamic scene that is, and for so many reasons. Iron Man getting to be like the Superman archetype in a way, like he's grabbing people out of midair, and I don't know if I ever really thought about it in those terms until you mentioned it, that there's a lot of practical effects in this movie, like there seem to be. Of course, there's a lot of green screen, kids, here. Let's don't get it twisted, but there are a lot of practical effects here too. I mean, this Iron Man is Iron Man fully realized. This is the first Iron Man film post Avengers, so he's dealing with basically PTSD in this film. What do you think as we get started here? I think that adds a whole other layer to Tony in this film. This is not the same Tony from part one, of course. I don't think it's the same guy from part two. We're seeing him evolve over the course of three movies, as you would hope a character would. He's not static, he's very dynamic. So, what
Yeah.
do you think about the added layer of him going up into the wormhole and seeing things he didn't want to see? And man, that makes him more complex than ever, doesn't it?
Yeah, I really like the backdrop of him having PTSD. Because we just don't see that done a lot in these kind of movies. And I just thought, it gave Tony something else other to do than, being charming and witty and all these other things
Mhm.
that we saw in all of his other appearances in MCU. And it gave him a chance to, do some other dramatic acting. That's another big reason why I like this movie. Like, there's so many things that he does here that he doesn't do in any other Iron Man movie or any other Avengers movie.
So, and I'm again, as I said earlier, I'm rewatching this for the second time in 2 days. I gotta get this out of the way quick because I gotta know what you think. I don't think I've ever asked you this before. Are you the nanite armor guy? Or are you the armor from this where he's got the sensors implanted into his arms? Where do you fall? Which armor is working better for you?
Um, yeah, it's man. One day I think we or someone has to come up with a ranking of every Iron Man suit up and
Mm.
just how epic all of his suit ups are. Like there's him getting thrown out the window in Avengers and the suit flying out behind him and him suiting up. There's the first time we see him suit up in the first Iron Man movie. There's of course the briefcase armor. Um, there's the Mark 42 in this movie. There's the nanite armor from Endgame. No, Infinity
Yes,
War.
Infinity War. Yes.
Infinity War, where he suits up on the street. Um, man, it's tough to beat briefcase armor or that nanite suit up.
Mm.
And then nanite suit up is probably more badass because the scene that it was in. And Mark 42 was unfinished. That was the whole gag of this entire movie, is that it
Right.
was a prototype. Um, there are some cool things he does with Mark 42, but I don't know, the way he suits up in Infinity War is probably better.
I hit you with this, I think, during the Iron Man 2 episode, I think. Have we seen in an Iron Man film a fully functioning, not test driven, fully powered suit of Iron Man armor? Because it seems like in all three movies, he's always at a disadvantage for some reason. I
Um,
I don't know that we have.
I would say in Civil War we do.
Civil War, sure.
Civil War we do. I think we saw I think the armor that he used in the second half of the first Avengers movie in Age of Ultron.
Mm.
Those suits are both are fully functional, and the suit he uses in Infinity War is probably his best suit at that point. And then of course
Mhm.
the last suit he uses in Endgame.
Yeah, yeah. In all the exterior movies, the additional movies, he's fine. But in his own trilogy, it and I'm sure that's by design. Like not only like we had to put this guy at a disadvantage. Like, but that's Marvel, right? Marvel's way of doing things is, let's see, the whole world's working against him. Hey, I got an idea. Let's make sure his suit screws up the whole film. Like, I actually love that. I actually love that these guys, they Marvel insists on these guys being so human to the point that, like it's like the Spider-Man syndrome in Marvel. Nothing ever goes right. No matter what happens, it never goes right. Like, I actually kind of really love that. What do you think about the tone of this movie in terms of not just the tone of the script, but the look of the film? How do you think this compares to the first two? Is it close enough to be the third in the trilogy? Is it separate enough to be its own thing, or do you think it just kind of blends in with the other two?
Um, I think people whose criticism of the early Marvel movies is that they all felt very similar.
Hmm.
I think you could see that criticism when watching Iron Man and Iron Man 2. And I feel like it's because um, as good as John Favreau is, and as great of a job as he did in the first movie, I don't think you get a tone of like this is the director's style watching
Mm.
those movies. But when you watch this movie, this feels like a Shane Black movie. This feels like, something in vein of Lethal Weapon or Kiss Kiss
Mm.
Bang Bang. Um, and that's part of what I enjoy so much about it is it feels like an Iron Man movie directed by Shane Black. And I feel like that's the same thing we get from the Guardians movies, for example. Like those are Guardians movies directed by James Gunn. Or when you look at Black Panther, like it has the feel and the touches that you would get from a Ryan Coogler movie. Um, yeah, I just think that those first two movies don't quite feel as distinct.
And Shane Black's resume speaks for itself. A writer on Lethal Weapon and the Monster Squad in '87. Um, Worked on the story of Lethal Weapon 2 in '89. Wrote The Last Boy Scout in '91 and was executive producer. He also wrote The Last Action Hero in '93, The Long Kiss Goodnight, as you mentioned, in '96, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think that's what you mentioned in 2005. He
Hmm.
also directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He also wrote AWOL in 2006, was executive producer. It was a short film. Then, of course, Iron Man 3, as we're talking about in 2013, directed and wrote, and then directed and wrote The Nice Guys in 2016 and The Predator in 2018. This guy is busy. And I knew him from Predator, from the first Predator film, is how I knew Shane Black. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing his journey through Hollywood, man. He's got a very distinctive style for
yeah,
sure. And I agree with you. This movie feels like a Shane Black film.
um, yeah. Big fan of Nice Guys, by the way. Very funny movie.
Yes.
I love
So
that
good.
movie.
So good. I think when it came out, I was still buying DVDs. Don't quote me on this. I think I bought the D. Yeah, because at the time I hadn't converted yet. I wasn't on the fence. I just hadn't made the full transition. So
And that was Blu-ray time by that point.
yeah, and yeah. No, well, that's what I mean. Blu-ray. I was doing
Okay.
Blu-ray, but it took me a while to convert to digital. Put it that way. I think I actually own the Blu-ray of that film. It's so funny. I went back and bought digital copies of movies I own on disc. And I'm thinking it's like the Tommy Lee Jones from Men in Black, where he's like, "You see, this disc has revolutionized the music industry. It means I'm going to have to buy the White Album again." I love that line. Like the stuff I love, I just keep buying it in every format it's released in. Um, I agree with you. This has a different tone. And honestly, I'm looking at it now. In this movie, we get the flashback at the beginning of New Year's Eve, and it's great. And it's Fat Happy. And then in modern day, it's Fat Happy again. But in the first two movies, Happy wasn't fat, which
Yeah.
is different. So like it's okay. And I'm a big continuity nerd, so I'm not losing any sleep over, but I did notice that. But Happy's got the biggest role he's had in any Iron Man film to date. And Jon Favreau is showing his acting chops again and how freaking hilarious this guy is. I mean, dude, Happy brings a whole other element to this story, which I think is needed. And if it's nothing more than comic relief, he does a great job. Can you imagine this franchise without Happy at this point?
No, absolutely not. But that's another part of the reason why it's good that he was still there as an actor because I just couldn't imagine this franchise at all without Jon Favreau.
Mm.
Um, I think we beat up on Iron Man 2 pretty bad in another
Yes.
episode. Um, but you still have to give Jon Favreau so much credit, man, because the first Iron Man movie is so good, and it paved the way for so many things. It's such an influential movie, and there are good things he did in Iron Man 2. I just think that it probably would have been better, the second movie, I mean, if it got more of his voice behind it and had more
Mm.
of a, concrete script behind it. And that's the thing with
Yeah.
this movie. It feels like this movie has a script. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It has like a point to point narrative. Like you can follow it. And I feel like that was a big thing that was missing in the second movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I went back to our review of part two. I want my bird. I want my bird. You want a bird? I can get you a bird. Just that comeback is the best thing ever. Like, all right, yeah, what kind of bird you want there, buddy? You know, whatever bird you want. I want my bird. Yeah, a lot of reasons that movie fell short, in my opinion. Um, by the way, kids, that episode's in the archives. Go treat yourselves later after you listen to this. Um, let's run down this cast. We know that Downey's back. It's his last stint as Iron Man in an Iron Man film, as we know. And the movie has a great ending, and we'll get there. Man, that ending, whew, so good. I can't wait to talk about it. Gwyneth Paltrow's back, of course, as Pepper Potts. Don Cheadle has returned for his second stint as War Machine, but this time it's Iron Patriot. Everybody seems to love the name except Tony, which is great. Um, but this time we've got, and of course we've got Paul Bettany as the voice of Jarvis. Always a great addition. Of course, we mentioned Favreau back as Happy Hogan. We got some new heavies this time, Phil, and not quite the same tone. Not quite the same tone as Justin Hammer, right, from the second film. But we've got Guy Pearce as Aldrich Killian, of course, leader of AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics, straight from the books. Good for them for sticking to the books. I got one word for Aldrich Killian, Phil, and I don't know if you've got anything better than this, but hit me if you do. Slimy.
He he's great. I really liked him in this movie.
Yes.
It's so hard to watch the movie once you find out some of the behind the scenes stuff. I don't know if you know this. But he was not supposed to be the main villain of the movie.
I think I know this.
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to be the main villain, and when you look at it, it's like, oh, that makes so much sense. By following the narrative of the movie, it's like, yeah, of course, it's not supposed to be him. But I think he does a good job as a stand-in. I enjoy a lot of his backstory. I enjoy, of course, his sliminess in some of the scenes with Pepper, and I think he's great in the final act in those action scenes. But yeah, Rebecca Hall's character is supposed to be the main bad guy, but they changed it later.
Yes, eventually shifted to Killian because of objections by Marvel Entertainment executives who were concerned with apparent merchandising losses that could come with having a female villain. Boo!
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the episode of why it made sense that it would have been her. Maya, that's her name, Maya Hansen.
Yes.
But yeah, I didn't have a problem with Killian. Of course, that it's just hindsight looking at knowing behind the scenes stuff and rewatching the movie as many times as I have. It's like, yeah, it just makes so much sense.
And you've mentioned her. Let's talk about, and again, before we move on from Aldrich, and we'll circle back to him, of course. It feels like once again, Iron Man's top villain is another variation of Tony Stark. You could
Yes.
argue that Obadiah Stane was an older version, but Obadiah wasn't really a tech guy. He was more of a business guy. But Justin Hammer, definitely a variation of Stark. Killian, very, very much a variation of Stark. I mean, why does that villain work so well against Tony? Why not another type of villain for Tony Stark Iron Man?
That's a good question, and I think that's why it would have probably been a more interesting story if they went with Maya instead, because we've seen that he's been a womanizer for 2 movies, and to see roosters come back to roost, in the form of a woman that he had a one night stand with, that would have been an interesting story. Um, but I think Aldrich works because he's not like Hammer and he's not like Stain. Um, he's a guy that kind of manipulated his way into AIM, and his plan is kind of wonky, but it works, I guess.
Yeah. And the thing about the Hansen character and my Hansen is Rebecca Hall. And I happen to love her in this. I think she is freaking great. The scene of the New Year's Eve flashback when she puts on Tony's glasses. Dude, when he looks at her, I thought if you didn't know any better, you'd swear he's fallen in love with her. That look he gives her when he turns his head a little to the side and just the way he stares at her, and then the camera cuts to her and she's smiling. I'm like, maybe he's not falling in love with her, but buddy, I bet she's falling in love with him. Which again, as you said, that comes back to roost later. Make the case for me why she should or shouldn't have been the lead villain. What do you think would have worked had they went that route?
Um, I mean, it would have made more sense that Pepper was the one that ultimately beat her. Um,
Hmm.
that would have been great follow through to their scenes earlier in the movie, and just the fact that he actually met someone and he made it work. Um, yeah, it. And there's other stuff like in the comic, she invented Extremis, the same as in the movie, and she wasn't necessarily a big bad in a sense where he had this big fight with her, but he did end up finding out that there was more to her than she was saying.
Hmm. And did it surprise you when it turns out she was with Killian? I mean, did you kind of figure that out, or did it come as like when the moment happened, you're like, "Oh crap, she's in it with him."
Um, um, it did surprise me when I watched it the first time, but it did mesh with her arc in the Extremis comic book.
There you go. Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I don't. I'm going back in my head about when the Extremist storyline took place in the books. I don't know that I was collecting at that time, or at least oh man, I'm sure I've got some issues. I'm sure I do. But I've even after the movie hit years ago, I've never went back and dug them out of the long boxes and looked at them. So I was kind of fuzzy on some of the character development there from the book to the movies. But yeah, no, you're right. It makes sense considering who she was in the book. Um, let's see, and we're gonna get to the other big bad who we thought was the other big bad, but we got to talk real quick about Ty Simpkins as Harley Keener. This could have been a throwaway role. This could have been, oh, it's a plucky kid. Crap. You know, because sometimes that works and sometimes it's horrible. But man, this works for me because Tony talks down to this kid, but he talks to him as an adult. He's never talked to Harley as a child. He talks to him like he's an adult, which means he doesn't take it easy on him. And it's obvious Tony doesn't know how to talk to kids. It's pretty obvious. But man, their banter, like for a child actor to be told you're going to share the screen with Downey, try to keep up, dude. I thought he did pretty darn well. What do you think about Harley, the character of Harley in this movie?
I really liked Harley, and I really liked his scenes with Tony. But you're right; it's really hard to do a kid in these kind of movies. I mean, there's so many examples of a kid character just not working. You've got stuff like people that don't like Wesley Crusher, or
Hmm.
people that don't like Justin from Power Rangers Turbo. There's so many examples of
Deep cuts.
there's so many examples of people having problems with a kid character, but I think he worked because man, there's so many things they did with him, whether it's helping Tony cope with his PTSD inadvertently, and then we kind of find out helping him, kind of leading him from a guy in the first movie that you couldn't see as a parent to getting to this movie where by the end you see himself in this kid a little bit, and it's kind of precursor to his relationship with Peter later, which of course becomes a precursor to him being actual dad. Um, and of course, I'm not going to sit here and say that they planned that all the way at Iron Man 3, but it is great that laid the groundwork for those story beats later. Um, but there's just so many great scenes with him and Harley. There's the him in the car and he's like, I'm cold. He's like, you're just gonna leave me here like my dad. Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I bet you're cold, aren't you? You know I can tell? Because we're connected.
Yeah, because he made that. He said, "You and I are connected." Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there's so many great things. Or, yeah, my dad went for a pack of smokes, never came back. And he was like, it happens. Don't be a pussy about it.
Yeah. What a great line. What a great line. The charm of Tony Stark and how this character couldn't exist in real life because he's so great and witty and charming, but also you just want to kick him in the face. because the way he talks to people, but it's just his way. But yeah, um, I love the callback later. They paid it off in Endgame, and they didn't have to. They totally didn't have to, but they had the common sense to say, you know what, Harley should be in the funeral scene. Harley should be here. I freaking loved it. And watching Endgame for the first time in the theater, the camera's moving from person to person. It shows this teenager, and I guess maybe he's not a teenager at that point, but I'm sitting there with whoever I watched it with, and the camera started to move away, and I'm like, oh, dude, that's Harley. And you could hear people in the theater start to put it together. And so then the tears got worse because it's like people were already really emotional. They were so invested in the memorial scene. But then it's like, oh my God, it's the kid from part 3. Again, man, I love the idea that Marvel just keeps connecting the dots for these properties. And has there ever been any talk of him having a future in the MCU? Has that, because I don't know the answer. Has that been discussed at all on any level, you think?
Not that I know of, but I also know that he signed up for more than one movie. So I always assumed he'd be back. Yeah, and I was glad to see him in Game. Hopefully we see him in some future movies. I'd assume that he's going to show up either in Ironheart show or the Armor Wars show that's going to be basically the Road Eat show.
Yes.
So yeah, I would love to see him again.
I love that. I love the idea of again them circling back and pulling from the continuity and making it work. Okay, it's my favorite part of the cast for this movie. I freaking I don't know. I'm gonna gush like a madman. Ben Kingsley as Travis Slattery. Oh my god. Oh my god. All right. Okay. Dude, I love this so much. And this was, while a lot of other people were disappointed and upset, well, this crap's supposed to be the Mandarin. I'm like, is no one paying attention to how brilliant, how utterly brilliant Ben Kingsley is? Who could have done this and dude, he's a compelling murderer. He's a compelling, cold-hearted, freaking terrorist, man. But then in the next scene, he is freaking hilarious, and you are losing your mind laughing. Dude, settle this for me. Tell me why this was the right move, that he's not the Mandarin after all. What do you think?
Listen, this is the episode that people are going to ask me to never come back to our show. Because Trevor Slattery forever, man. Trevor Slattery is one of the best characters in this movie. I love him. I love that he came back for Shang-Chi. He's just so great in this movie, but I'm sure some of the gags bother people, but I thought most of it was funny. And Mandarin sucks. Sorry, Mandarin sucks. Mandarin is a racist character, bro. I don't care. He's a total stereotype. It was going to be hard to use him in this movie and not change things about the character. Now, it looks like in the initial press and everything, it looked like they were just going to whitewash him and make him like a random terrorist guy with like Asian trappings around him, which I don't think is much better than trying to do like the Yellow Peril stuff.
Right.
I think what we got in Wen Wu was the best we're going to possibly get in a Mandarin character in a movie. Wen Wu was way more interesting than Mandarin would have ever been. Sorry. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with what they did here. I thought that Kingsley committed to the role, and he was he was great in the comedic scenes. I thought he was great in the scenes where we're supposed to believe he's actually a terrorist.
Yes.
And I thought he was great in that little short they gave him as well.
Oh my God. And when Stark is like evaluating who this guy is, and he says something about, he sounds like a Baptist preacher when he talks, and it doesn't fit. He doesn't sound Middle Eastern at all. And he doesn't sound, I love that we're going through the film too, going, wait a minute, he does sound like a Southern Baptist preacher. What's going on here? That's so fun, man.
He's an actor.
And dude, in the middle of him talking, he falls asleep, and Tony's like, Wait, I'm sorry. Are you napping right now? Like,
He's so great. I'm sorry. I loved it.
oh. And there's that one spot where I think Rhodey and Tony both come in, and he's holding his beer. And when he wakes up, he immediately starts drinking again, like it's right there in his hand. Oh my god, dude!
Yeah, when he wakes up and he starts just yelling, "Ole, ole, ole,
Yeah,
ole."
yeah. And Tony's got the gun and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, so you fancy one of the birds? Huh? Huh? What do you think? Huh?" Like he's trying to get him to take one of the girls. It's so great. Oh, and they duped him. They paid him off in drugs and told him they weren't hurting anybody. And the gun had blanks in it when he supposedly shot whoever, the guy from the Roxxon Oil Corporation. So he didn't know anything wrong was happening.
Yeah, I love his response to Tony when Tony was like, "Yeah, so they got you off drugs and cleaned you up." Like, no, they gave me more.
Yeah. Oh, and he's so matter of fact. He's like, yes, yes. He's so matter of fact when he answers the questions. Like he's not hiding anything anymore. Yeah.
Oh
I was
man,
really hoping at some point we'd get more of him. I'm so glad we did, you know.
yeah, he's great. He's great. I'm sorry if there are people listening to this that feel that Mandarin was disrespected and this gag is everything they hate about Marvel movies, but I really enjoyed it.
I think they took a difficult character that was going to be next to impossible to put on the screen and they made it work. And not only did they make it work, they didn't exclude the character. They didn't act like it never existed. They just brought it in and made it a story element instead of making it a real character.
Yeah, and they still left the Ten Ring stuff for somebody else to do later, and
Yes.
we got something that was ultimately better in Wenwu and Shang-Chi.
Absolutely. Yeah, they paid it off later. Couple secondary characters to mention here, kids. James Badge Dale, who I had honestly never heard of. He's been in the Pacific. He was in The Departed. He was in The Gray, and also in 13 Hours. So he's got a fairly good career as Eric Savin. And of course, that is a character from the books, which is cool. He is a great henchman, and he is almost unbeatable. Like the dude walked away from an explosion. And I love when Tony near the end is like, walk away from that, put a hole through him, which was really freaking awesome. Um, I think he's great. And then we also have, and it's a matter of pronouncing her name correctly, Stephanie Sostak, I think. She was from The Devil Wears Prada, Jennifer Schmucks, R.I.P.D. And yeah, she was as Ellen Brandt, another member, again from the books of Killian's organization. And of course, the story you come to find out that he was using the extremist program on soldiers. They're regenerating limbs and sort of, putting them back together, making them whole. And it's a drug like anything else, and they need a fix. And one of the first things you see is is Savin asking, "Can you regulate?" And that becomes a thing. Killian's much more inundated with this stuff than we could ever imagine, and we see it in the third act of the film. Here comes the popular heel villain plot question. Phil, are you ready? Um, does the evil Grandmaster plan by Aldrich Killian, does it make sense? And if not, why? And if so, why?
Um, the plan makes sense, but it's something that I feel like you would only see in a genre movie because his plan is essentially to create a threat, to create a fake threat, um, so that he can make money by disposing of the threat that he created. Um, and that sounds like sound logic, but there's some holes you can poke in it. um, but yeah, it's definitely a comic booky plan. It's definitely a mustache twirling plan. Like, if I corner the market on what is terrorism, then I will be the answer to terrorism, and I will make all the money on it. Ha ha ha.
Right. Yeah, that's good. You're right. It is very. I'm gonna tie it to the real road, and when the train comes, I'm gonna be the one to save her to make out like I'm the good guy and not the villain. It's that kind of weird.
It
Yeah, it's kind
it's
of convoluted.
it's syndrome. It's his plan is basically it's
Ah,
basically syndrome. He created a threat and then he came and saved people from it, and he looks like the hero, and then he makes money off of it.
Yes. Good callback. Good callback. Love that movie. God, I freaking love that movie. Um, yeah, there's moments where I'm like, what is going on? It's obvious, much like Hammer. No one's saying Hammer's not smart. No one's saying Hammer's not a good salesman. It worked. He sold his company to people and sold his weapons. He's smart, but the tech is horrible. So he fell short. Killian's ideas are not bad, but when Pepper mentions the fact that it sounds like it can be weaponized, it's almost like if he didn't know that, he wouldn't have known it. You know what I mean? Like I wonder how much of Extremis started out as, hey, we can weaponize this. I think it was honestly supposed to have been, I got a great idea. I'm coming up with something. I think this could really work. I've got brilliant minds behind it. I just need you for funding. I need you as the last piece of the puzzle. And of course, Stark sent him up to the roof and, left him hanging out to dry. But like the idea of we can weaponize this, I don't even know if that would have even come to pass had Tony not left him on that roof. And it's kind of like the Logan episode that we did. Again, kids in the archives. Had Logan and Laura and Professor X not stayed with that family, they would not be dead. So Tony created his own problem, and he acknowledges that from the jump of this film. It's his fault that all this happened to begin with, yes?
I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about this movie is that he got essentially his biggest win as a hero coming out of Avengers, but he still has all these things he had to face in his life because he still created all of these personal demons. Um, and yeah, the other thing about Aldrin's plan that is kind of weird is that they haven't perfected the extremis program. So he is using the experiments to bomb places and fake them as terrorist attacks. Um, I mean that works, I guess, in theory, but it's kind of like what? It's like so you have this whole think tank with AIM, and you still haven't figured out how extremist works, and all of the ones that are faulty that explode, you're just using them to further your plan. It seems kind of convenient.
Right. Did you think, despite where he's at in the books and despite how important he becomes later in other movies, namely the Spider Man trilogy, did you think that this was it for Happy when the explosion happened?
No, I didn't.
No? Hmm.
Because at that time, I still wasn't sure if they're going to make more Iron Man movies.
Ah, good call. Yeah. Um, we've said it before here, Phil, about the fact that you can't really do a Batman and Iron Man. You can't really do Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne because they're not the same guy. They're motivated by very different things. Bruce Wayne's motivated by vengeance and revenge. People don't want to call it revenge. It's a mission, whatever you want to call it. If you say mission too much, that's Punisher's thing. But like, as you said, Stark's motivated by his past. I mean, we met Ho Jensen in this movie, who we meet in the first Iron Man, because he referenced, "I met you once." Basically, you blew me off like I wasn't there, and he totally did in this movie. Another great callback. But like, you can't really compare Tony to anybody. You can't really compare him to Bruce Wayne or anybody. So like, his motivations will be different. He's not motivated out of anger. He's not motivated out of vengeance. He's not motivated out of spite or a mission for justice or nothing like that. He's got a past that he's fighting. He's kind of like John Wick in that regard. Like he's got this huge past that he tried to walk away from, but his past follows him every time he turns around. It's there to try to get him back. So like the rest of his life, he's trying to get some sort of redemption or peace. I mean, Tony's life is supposed to be wrought with peril because the way he lived up until the events of Iron Man 1, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of this movie is it's I used the phrase earlier, chickens coming back to roost.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's got a lot of things that he has to answer for. It's not like he just decided I'm going to put this armor on and be a better person and all those things go away.
Yeah, there's those complications that again, it's the end of Iron Man 1 when Nick Fury shows up in his in his house, and he's like, "Do you think you could just do what you did? No, and there wouldn't be something to come back from it. You know, you've entered a whole other world here. You're not the first guy I've dealt with that kind of does this kind of thing." I mean, it's there's consequences to everything you do, kids. I mean, hopefully it's good consequences because you did the right thing. But if you did the wrong thing, my name is Ed. You got to make up for it. Make a list. Start making up for it much as you can, because karma will get you. Um, so during the course of this movie, again, we see Tony continue his evolution as a character. We see him become a better man. He's learning from his mistakes. He's learning from past mistakes. He can only ever play catch up. He's never on the offensive. It always feels like he's on the defensive. It's just that idea of, again, Batman always has a plan. If he has a plan, he can beat you. Iron Man, it never feels like Tony has a plan. He's just flying by the seat of his armor, right? So like he's just, well, hopefully I'll figure this out. I'll just go fix it. And the idea that he's a mechanic really got played up in this film. And I love that idea that Tony's more than one thing. He's not just a billionaire playboy philanthropist. He's not just a hero. He's a mechanic. He's a tinkerer. He's still a kid at heart. I mean, what about the notion that Tony, at the end of the day, is just a guy with a wrench in his hand, and he's got a problem and he's got to fix it? I think that boils him down to the bare essentials. And I think it works, seeing as how a lot of this movie is not very high tech. He's in a barn, for God's sake, in Tennessee, putting the Iron Man suit in, dragging it in there, trying to figure out how to fix everything. It kind of brings the character down to earth a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like everything we saw him in the first movie, it kind of brings it full circle. That we see in the first movie that he spent a lot of the movie building the armor, and like it's kind of a call back to that movie and saying like, oh, I started this as just a guy that built a suit. I'm just a mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just that's what yeah, he just refers to himself as that. And when he maxed out the kid's shed with all the sick stuff at the end, and he left a card and it just said, "Your friend the mechanic." So that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really enjoyed his relationship with Harley in those moments, because especially like him telling him, yeah, that potato gun would probably be better if you did this and this to it, and he shoots it at him, and it's like like actually he's like, oh, okay, and so then and of course the other thing he put on a note was potato gun 2.0.
Yeah, very good. I love that, actually, because when he shot him, he's like, "Okay, all right, well, now you're out of ammo." So again, he never talks to Harley like he's a child. One cast member we didn't mention is President Ellis, the great William Sadler, dude. Uh, I I don't know which side of the fence this guy's supposed to be on. I don't think they ever really make that clear. Um, I believe there will be a new president in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, on the Disney Plus shows. I think. Don't quote me on that. But it seems like I read the other day there's going to be another version of the president. I guess the next guy after this one. I don't know. What do you think about William Sadler's role here? He doesn't have much to do, but at least he's not portrayed as a heartless politician who doesn't care. They try to humanize him as much as they could. Um, what do you think about him in this film?
I think he's great. I think he doesn't get a lot to do in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the scenes that he's in, I think he does a great job.
And speaking of evolution, because I'm going to rapid fire this stuff at you because we haven't talked about it much. Rhodey, Don Cheadle, his second go around as War Machine, now Iron Patriot. Um, did he get enough to do in this film? Do you think it's on par? Was it? I mean, it's obviously more than the second one, right? So, how do you feel about his evolution? Did they do enough in this movie for him?
I actually think that he is better in this movie than he was in Iron Man 2.
Hmm.
Um, it, I do think he's still a side character. He doesn't really develop past just being Tony's friend, but I do enjoy some of the banter that him and Tony had more in this movie. I do enjoy um some of his character moments in this movie a bit more, like of him coming him coming in on Trevor with the gun and putting it next to his face, and then going, who is this guy? Where's the Mandarin? He's like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna shoot this guy's face off.
Uh, I think we saw a little bit more of the I follow orders, I do what I'm told in part two, which makes him not very fun. It's good because it makes him a more complex character and not as straightforward. But in this movie, we didn't have to contend with that too awful much. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. What's your take on the Iron Patriot armor? Are you a War Machine or an Iron Patriot guy?
So the Iron Patriot armor is tied to Norman because that was Norman's suit when he led the Thunderbolts.
Right.
So when I think about that, I'm like, oh man, are they going to do Thunderbolts later? That's immediately what I thought when I saw it. But yeah, I mean, War Machine is when I think Rhodey, I think War Machine. If he's not War Machine, he's Iron Man because he was Iron Man for a little while. But yeah, I think War Machine is that's what he should go by. I thought it was hilarious when he gives the password and it's War Machine Rocks.
All caps. All caps. Yeah, it's great. Hey, look, here's a road we haven't gone down. We've spent an inordinate amount of time on the 6M discussing the future of Black Panther. And kids, as this is being recorded, there's no new Black Panther film yet. So just hold on to yourselves and brace yourselves for what's coming because we're not quite sure what's happening yet with it, all right? But we'll try to get this out long before Black Panther 3 or Black Panther 2 comes out. We haven't really discussed, should Rhodey take the Iron Man armor? What do you think about that?
I wouldn't mind seeing it. I just think that some people will always have a problem with, you know, uh, another character taking on these mantles because we're just so used to, we're just so used to, Steve or Tony or whoever else. I wouldn't mind them going into why he wouldn't want to be Iron Man in this Armor War show, but understanding that it's his responsibility to protect Tony's tech in his legacy. Um, yeah. I, but then again, on top of that, I wouldn't mind also seeing him as Iron Man. Either route they go in, I wouldn't mind it.
I'd love to see it, and I think it would make those conversations that he had with Sam on Falcon and Winter Soldier mean so much more. Like the idea of you're stepping into a larger role. Can you do this? Are you ready for this? I mean, that would. I mean, being War Machine / Iron Patriot's one thing, but to become the Iron Man, that's a whole other thing altogether. It's not just another suit of armor; it's Tony's armor.
Yeah.
I mean, whew, man.
It's big shoes to step into for anybody, and especially somebody that was his friend long before any of that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I guess it's more of an Ironheart type of role instead of someone just taking Iron Man's armor, I would suppose. So same question about Pepper. Is Pepper on track in this movie? We get to see her actually starting to kick some butt, which I'm sure was all kinds of fun for Gwyneth Paltrow, who looks like she can more than take care of herself in this movie. Um, it her and Tony's relationship has evolved. I keep using that word, but not to go too nuts here with the end, but like their final embrace is not a deep, long, open mouth kiss that lasts 5 minutes, because that's not what they are. Like they're not. Oh my God, my darling, I love you so much. That's not them. Their love is a lot deeper than just let's make out on camera for the sake of it being a I love you kind of crap. I mean, it's they have such a strong bond. Is her character where she needs to be in this film? Do you think they did enough with the story between her and Tony?
Yeah, I really liked where they ended this movie with her and Tony. They set up the stuff for Rescue later, so that when we see Rescue in Endgame, it makes sense. Yeah, I really enjoyed where they left their relationship.
Man, she is a long suffering girlfriend / fiance / wife. Long suffering. Because Whew, the stuff this girl has put up with. Is she done with the MCU? Do you think she'll be involved with the Armor Wars and all this stuff moving forward, or do we know that yet?
I'm not sure. I think it makes sense to see her again in something like the Ironheart show. Um, or, I mean, even possibly Armor Wars. It definitely makes sense. I'm not sure if we will see her again though.
Mm, I would love to see her again. She's such an integral part of the Iron Man story. Um, so you started this out at the beginning saying that you thought this was better. Did you say you thought this was better than the first Iron Man?
Oh yeah, I think it's the best Iron Man movie.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Um, it may be a hot take for some people, but dude, I don't. I can see the complaints with part two. I can't see a lot of the reason for the complaints with part three. I just don't understand. Like to me, again, it's an entertaining film.
Yeah, it's not so much that I think I have complaints with the first Iron Man movie. It's just certain things about this movie that I enjoy more.
Mm,
Um, I don't know. There's just certain moments in it that I really really enjoy. There's stuff like Tony, at the beginning of the movie having that conversation with Rhodey at the restaurant, and him having a panic attack, and then walking out and crawling into the armor and just flying away, not giving any explanation, just leaving. I just thought that stuff was great. I think the first time we see him use the not the F um the 42 for the first time and suit up is
mm-hmm.
great. Um, man, I don't know, man. I think you'd be hard pressed to beat this third act in this movie. I think this is easily the best third act in any Iron Man movie.
I'll agree with that. I don't think I think you're totally right on that count. I think, in my opinion, the Warmonger stuff was good. I don't think it was great.
Yeah,
We were all let down by the freaking the Whiplash deal with the armor. I That didn't end at all like we thought it would. He was on the ground, boots on the ground for like 30 seconds, and they killed him.
yeah, and then the way they beat him with that hokey, let's use our repulsor beams at the same time. What do they call
Yeah,
it? The handshake or
something like that.
the high five? The high five.
The high five. It's like Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little hokey.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about kid actors and how the Harley character could have been horrible. I still think Ed from Cowboy Bebop is freaking terrible. That whole series I could have done without that character. And the live action, which I personally enjoyed, and all you people out there who hated on it and spent your days and nights tweeting about it incessantly and wanted it took down, you got your wish. Are y'all happy? Because a fanboy property from the world of geek culture got taken down and got all this hate, no downloads, no views, because all you crazy fanboys out there just had to have your way. Like, why can't we just have cool stuff? I don't get it. But I wasn't looking forward to seeing Ed in the live action show either. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan. I can't help it. I got a kid. I love my kid. Doesn't mean I love all kids. That's the bottom line what I'm trying to say here, folks. Um, yeah, they could have screwed it up, but I love the idea. And as I said, we kind of threw around the idea of Harley coming back in Armor Wars. I think that'd be great. Um, Yeah, I'm a fan of this film. I don't see where a lot of the nonsense is coming from. I think people just want to hate stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, is Extremis the most dangerous? I can't say villain because that's Killian, but the most dangerous threat that Iron Man's faced in his own trilogy to this point?
Um, I think this is the first time that we've seen a villain he faced in his trilogy that had technology that was more advanced than his.
Hmm.
Because the Stain just basically copied his design for Mark One, and he stole his arc reactor to power it. We see the Hammer can't get it together, and it's the same thing with Whiplash. Whiplash is just using the initial design for the arc reactor that his dad and Howard Stark invented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that we see someone that has an advancement um, that Tony has not seen yet, and it's so ahead of him that he ends up integrating it into his own armor and stuff later.
Oh, good call. Very good call. I didn't even think about that bit. Um, but at the end of the day, Pepper gets it, and supposedly they rid her of it. Um, there's always possibility to call back things later, right?
Yeah,
But now that Downey's done, I don't know why you'd need to call it back, but I wonder if there would ever come a moment where like they would have to call it back because, okay, Tony got rid of Extremis in Pepper, but did he? Like, I wonder if that would ever come back around in
yeah.
an Armor Wars episode or something.
I didn't get the feeling that he got rid of it. I think that he stabilized it so
Mm,
that it wasn't combustible like some of the other failed experiments with it. Because he used extremis on his own body to take the arc reactor out.
very true. Very true. And honestly, does that mean that if Pepper's cutting a tomato in her kitchen and cuts her finger, it heals up?
It's a good question. Maybe it does.
Got a healing factor now, kids. That's interesting. Um, yeah, I'm with you. And so, all right. So it's not his tech, but like he had the answer in '99. He wrote down this formula on the back of the card that he left for her, and on the front of the card it said, "You know my name," which was a line that he repeated in the film, and I think Mandarin said that also. So it's one of those common themes that ran through the whole movie.
Yeah,
But he had already figured out the tech years ago. He just hadn't finished it yet because he forgot about it.
exactly. No, but yeah, it was. Of course, once he got his hands on it, you know, he perfected it. But it was the first time that we had seen this idea of escalation again in Iron Man franchise, where all right, all of these other guys are trying to catch up to your tech, but meanwhile, AIM has something that is just miles ahead of what you have. They just haven't perfected it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of different villains. I like the idea of different villains without the same tech because we talked about that in episode 2, where it's like the first 2 movies are all about Stark's tech because he's fighting his past. Well, part 3 is fighting his past also, but this time it's the people that he hurt. Um, had Tony not been killed in Endgame, and we had got Iron Man 4, possibly 5, maybe. I don't know if you ever get away from that theme. Is that one of the reasons why you can't keep Iron Man going, the Tony Stark version? Because every single film basically would have been about, hey, remember the bad guy you were 10 years ago? Well, guess what, pal? We're back. I mean, by virtue of who he used to be, that you kind of always had to circle back to that to some degree, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some more interesting stuff they could have done with Iron Man for future movies. Um, but there's a concept here that I really enjoy about the movie is it's not just that his past is coming back to get him, it's that um, this is the first time that this guy who calls himself, a futurist and a realist, and in a lot of ways the future is uncertain to him, and that's why he's having so many breakdowns because the tech that he's facing, um, he doesn't have much experience with it yet. So it's
Mm.
like this is the future, and he hasn't gotten a grasp of it yet. And then at the same time, he's been he's been thrown into this world where he is completely out of his depth, and that's with going through the wormhole and dealing with things like aliens and gods and all this other superhero stuff that he is just not prepared for it. And I think a big
Mm.
part of Iron Man 3 is that um, he had to prepare himself to step into the future.
Mm.
And the whole movie is him, preparing himself with that, whether that be with Harley and, facing things like, being older and potentially being a dad and facing things that, you know, leftover stuff with his dad from Iron Man 2, or facing having a real relationship with Pepper, and that's a big theme throughout this movie as well.
Yeah, because he's flat out he admits to her that he's a hot mess, which is something you never thought you'd hear Tony Stark say, that he doesn't have it all together.
And I mean, yeah, because I mean, he basically has the girl, but at this point in the movie, they live together, but he's also still up at night, tinkering and trying to figure out how to deal with what's next. Um, just the idea that he couldn't sleep and he built all those armor, all of those different armors, and all the way up to Mark 42, and had them in the basement because he was preparing for what was next, and he didn't know what was next. I just think
Mm.
that's such a good touch.
And yeah, we can't even begin to even think about wrapping this up without talking about the armor, because this is the most amount of armor we've seen in Iron Man film ever. Maybe in any Avengers film ever, I believe. I mean, dude, is there any armor that you would like to have seen here that you didn't see? Because man, there was a bunch of armor in this film, man.
Yeah, I think a good part of why I enjoy the third act so much is him calling the armory. It's just such a cool moment. He does it in I think he does it in New Avengers. That's where the scene is from in the comics. But it's just such a cool scene of him calling all of his armor and using all of this different throwaway armor. Um, and some of them are references to armor that he actually used in the comic, like the Silver Centurion. Nicely talks about in the Iron Man 2 episode how that is my favorite Iron Man armor. So it's cool to see him use that in live action, even though it got destroyed immediately. um,
Yes.
but it just was so cool to see him use so many different armors, including the Mark 42.
Okay, so let's see if we can run this down. We have Mark 17, which is the artillery level RT suit, also called the Heartbreaker, which is a great design. Kid, when you get a chance, look this up. This is courtesy of IGN.com. The Mark 33, the enhanced energy suit, also called the Silver Centurion, which the silver is very subdued here. I would rather have seen a full red and silver, like the one phase of Iron Man armor in the books in the 80s, I believe it was, maybe early 90s. Mark 35, the disaster rescue suit, also called the Red Snapper, a little bit bulkier. It's kind of similar to the Hulk Buster armor. Mark 38, the heavy lifting suit, or Igor, kind of looks like a gorilla, which is pretty freaking great.
I really
The
like
Mark,
Igor.
oh, it's so much fun. It's blue, man. Come on. Mark 39, the suborbital suit, also called Gemini, that looks like this thing could go into deep space, which again, it's suborbital.
Yeah,
The Mark 40, the hypervelocity suit, also called Shotgun, which looks like a freaking gun.
yeah.
Like,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the orbital suit? Isn't that one white and gold?
yes, I think so. Let me scroll. But yes, it is.
Yeah, I really like the design and
Yeah.
the color they use for that one.
The gold face, it's reminiscent of the gold plate they put on the astronauts' helmets. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah,
Um, Mark 41, the skeleton suit, also called Bones, which just looks cool. Um, Mark 30, the Silver Centurion upgrade, blue steel is what it's called. Let's see. Mark 40, the heavy construction suit, also called Striker / Thumper, which looks great. It's got those big arms that pound down. Um, that I don't know if that's all, but that's all I've got in front of me. Let's see. I think that's it. Um, Quite a bit of armors here, man. Um, Remind me of this because I don't know what book this is from. It was black and gold, and there was a gold. It was not exactly Iron Man armor from the books. It was in the books, but I'm not sure who it was. It was black and gold.
I know that he had like a black and gold suit at one point in his own book. I can't remember
Hmm.
which series that was.
I don't remember either, but I remember that because I always liked that suit too. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I can't remember who was writing the book at that time, but I remember it. Oh, I can't remember.
Maybe was that the Armor Wars suit? Maybe
Was it? Um,
that sounds familiar, but I could be wrong.
I he had it in one of the newer comics. It was around early like 2010s. Like I think it was around
Mm,
2012, 2013.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
I can't remember who was writing that book, and I collected that book. But I did like that look a lot.
I did too. Armor Wars was red and silver as well as red and gold. So he wore a lot of red and silver in those.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm seeing the cover of that comic with him with the black and gold armor on it,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
just cannot remember who wrote that book. Um, but yeah, I like that armor quite a bit.
yeah. I was hoping we'd see that one. I like how Harley's the one that suggested stealth to him, as if he had never thought of the stealth suit before.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's see. That's the Mark L. The black and gold is the Mark L or the Mark XX Python.
hmm.
Um, yeah, it depends on whose opinion you're looking at here, kids. But man, there's others. Let's see. Yeah, there's a book, Tony Stark Iron Man. It's got Tony illustration on the cover, and the Iron Man suit's kind of flying near him. Um, yeah, I'm a fan of this black and gold, man. I'm telling you, it looks really good.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I really like the red repulsor accents on it too. I really like that too.
Um, I'm trying to think about how to phrase this question because I'm a sucker for the armors. I think they're great. Is he the cool? I mean, with the advent of all these armors, isn't he got to be like the coolest Avenger because of his looks, because of his tech, because he can make this tech. I mean, dude, at this point, he can summon it from halfway across the world to another country. I mean, or to another state. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, this guy's his brilliance, if nothing else. I mean, Thor looks cool. Cap will always look cool because of the suit and everything and all that. But like Iron Man is just on another level, dude. The design, the style, the what do you call it, the race car red or the hot rod red from the first movie. I mean, he just
Yeah,
looks cool, man.
yeah. I think that he is more effortlessly cool than any of the other Avengers. He's the most flashy Avenger. He's always been the
Mm.
most flashy Avenger, and I mean, it's easy to say like when you look at like rich superheroes, it's him and it's Batman, and Batman has all the cool gadgets, but in some ways, Batman's look and everything is still sleek because he's still like a stealth character. But
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man, he's flashy. His stuff is in some ways very ostentatious, and I think that's part of what makes Tony so cool, man. Like it's kind of hard to believe that they couldn't have figured out a way to make Iron Man more marketable before the Marvel Studios movie because it just makes so much sense. You could sell so many toys with this guy. You can do so many other things to make this guy marketable. It's kind of crazy that he was not considered, a flagship character until the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, no kidding. God, he's been around forever. Iron Man has. Um, yeah, it's supposedly filming is supposed to begin this year. I don't know that it started yet. Yasser Lester was brought in as the series head writer for Armor Wars. He is an American stand-up comedian, writer, and actor. I don't even know what to make of that, but I'll tell you this: um, the Marvel has my vote to the end of time because I can name on one hand the couple of films that I wasn't a huge fan of. But meanwhile, everything else I love. So like, no, unless they just were to completely screw this up, and you'd have to think at this point, Cheadle's smart enough. He knows what a good script looks like and sounds like and reads like and feels like. I mean, he knows Rhodey better than anybody at this point. Besides, people actually write the guy. I mean, if it wasn't good or wasn't working, I have a hard time believing he'd be in, or at least not be voicing his concerns. So hopefully the story's good. Hopefully the direction's good. Hopefully the everything turns out great. And supposedly Tony's death is going to play a major role in the series, which it should. Feel the idea that, okay, Stark made the ultimate sacrifice. He saved the freaking planet, man. If not for Tony, wow, that's a whole other conversation. If not for Tony, where would the Marvel Cinematic Universe be right now in terms of the actual, kayfabe universe as it goes? But to believe that, okay, Tony's gone, well, let's shut the doors. No, Stark Industries is still a thing. It's still alive and well, right? So, I mean, the armor's still there. The production's still there. The whatever they're doing with themselves since he stopped producing weapons of war, it's ridiculous to believe that all of that would just go away. Of course, there's still a story to be told. So What would you do with Armor Wars? What have they not done in the movies? And I know the Armor Wars was a series in the books. What do you hope they do in the series?
I hope we get to see um what the future would look like with Tony's tech and without him there to protect it.
Mm.
And because we kind of need to see why there's a conflict and why Rhodey would step in or whoever will step in.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm really curious to see certain things like because we see so much of those first two movies of him protecting his tech and deciding that he doesn't want to be a part of selling weapons anymore. So I just want to see what does the world look like. Um, well, I mean, we've seen glimpses of what the world looks like without Tony, but just that side of the world when it comes to weapons manufacturing and contract work, or that kind of stuff like foreign policies and stuff without him.
Yeah, because that's a great call. It's kind of along the same lines of how do we do Captain America now that Steve Rogers is no longer Captain America? I mean, it wasn't the suit, it wasn't the shield, it wasn't the serum, it was the man. So maybe that's the point of the Armor Wars is that look, it's not about the armor, it's about how Tony handled himself with the armor. So that makes sense. God, now I want to see it like really bad, and we're probably 2 years away from seeing it. Um, yeah, geez. The end of the film, and I got to hit you with this because, man, upon watching again, I was reminded of the very first time I saw it. I thought, wait a minute. And look, I've been a fan for years, like you've been, especially the books going into the MCU, right? I knew better. But the first time I saw this, I thought, wait a minute. He blew up all his suits. He had the arc reactor removed from his body. It's over. He gets a happy ending. Wow. What does this mean for Avengers 2? Like, I legit was buying into the fact that, man, they're going to let him have a happy ending. This is weird and bizarre, but cool at the same time. Dude, it truly felt like, and I know it was a plot point now, but at the time, it really felt like he gets a happy ending. He's walking away. Like, did that strike you at all? And during the first time you saw it, or did you know, nah, it's all crap. There's no way. I mean, could they have went a different route if they'd wanted to, or was it just that was never in the cards for him to have a happy ending to begin with?
I thought it was a very good way to end his trilogy. I thought it was
Hmm.
the right note to end it. And him doing all that and getting the arc reactor removed, and him saying that was the best sleep he had ever had,
Hmm.
and him having a happy ending, and putting the necklace around um, Pepper's neck with the shrapnel in it. Um, I thought all of that stuff was a good touch. Of course, he's a he's a superhero, so I didn't think it was just the end and that he was gonna always have a happy ending. But I thought it was a great way to end his arc for those three movies. Um, man, there's just so that but that's why I said there's so many things I enjoy about this movie. There's so many great payoffs. I mean, this that like we noted earlier, the stuff with Harley and him, you not forgetting what Harley did for him and paying it off later and still being friends with him. Um, just the payoff of his stuff with Pepper towards the end of the movie. Pepper ending up saving him, and then them being able to have a happy ending together briefly. Um, him leaving his house, which gets blown up towards the end of the movie, and that's where he lives for the entire trilogy, and moving on. It was kind of like him finally having to grow up in some ways. It's weird looking at it that way, but in some ways, it feels like this movie is a coming of age movie for him, and it sounds funny because he's he's a man that's well in his 30s. Um, But it does kind of feel like that. It's kind of like, all right, his bachelor pad got blown up. He's got to move on and build towards the future and be in a monogamous relationship. Um, and he had to face the fact that his dad may not have been in his life in the way that he wanted it to be, but he's got to move on, and he has to see that he's not the only person that has dad issues in Harley, and at some point he's got to deal with being a dad himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's a great way to sum it up. I mean, you're right. It does feel like the best way to end the trilogy. I'll totally agree with that. Man, and then we know what happens to him later, and it's like, oh, it just got you. Like, there's an argument to be made that it had to be Tony in Endgame. It had to be Tony, and I'm okay with that. I think it makes
Yeah,
sense for his character. But man, it's still crushing because I just love Downey so much, dude.
it is crushing, but that's why it's meant to be so crushing, because as Steve said, he's not the guy that makes that play.
Yeah.
But man, there's just so many things to like about this movie. I mean, his banter, when he goes to the restaurant and he finds the file, and he ends up having that fight with the henchman without his armor. And one of my
It's
favorite
great.
exchanges in the entire movie of him trying to avoid, I can't remember the woman's name that is shooting at him, and uh and she goes, "That's all you got? A cheap trick and a cheesy one liner?" He goes, "Lady, that could be the name of my autobiography."
That's so good, man. That's so good. What about when he takes out the guards and then the other guy comes around the corner with the machine gun and is like, you know what? I don't need this job. These guys are so weird. And he just
so
runs off.
so great. Or I totally forgot the lead up to that line is, "You walked right into this. I've dealt with way more hotter women than you."
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, he has so many great one-liners in this. I mean, him summoning the armor, and Rhodey seeing him coming in the distance, and him going, "Is that?" Yep. And he's like, "Well, it's Christmas, right? Take him to church."
Oh, I love that. I love that. It immediately reminded me of the Ice Cube track. That's the first thing that jumped into my head. So I couldn't help it. Um, Dude, it just the Marvel Cinematic Universe is much worse for not having Downey because of the character of Tony Stark, and that's why it's always gonna not feel right. It's never gonna feel the same as it did before, and I'm okay. I'm fine. They're still doing the Lord's work over there. The Disney Plus service, I mean, it's doing great stuff. The movies, I'm sure, are gonna keep delivering. But yeah, dude, there's a big part of me that says, "Ah, this is never gonna be the same again." But I mean,
I mean, I I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people won't feel the same way as I did. But I feel like this was a good way for his solo movies to end on. I mean, there's so many great action scenes. I mean, um, just the attack of his house and the house collapsing and him trying to put on the armor. And there's that great scene of him using the armor to protect Pepper, and and throwing the armor at her, and it suiting up around her before she hit the wall.
oh.
And then, or the armor, him suiting up as the building is collapsing, and then you have that great scene of him underwater trying to get out. Man, it's just so many great visual moments. Like we said, the rescue from the airplane. Uh,
Oh yeah, we never circle back to that, man. Uh, are you okay with that? It's visually stunning, but like, how are these people not passing out and throwing up and having massive heart attacks? They just got thrown out of a plane.
um, yeah, I just like how they filmed it. It just looks so great. Him, coming up with this plan on the fly to save them, and then we find out all this time that he wasn't even in the armor.
hmm
Um, I thought that was great. I thought the visual of him doing that, and then the Mark 42 gets smashed into pieces by that truck. That's such a cool scene. One of my favorite scenes of him doing the siege of the fortress that Mandarin's in by MacGyvering his way out of the situation, going to a hardware store and making weapons out of Christmas decorations and like the nail gun and
Yeah,
all other stuff. I thought that scene. I always pop for that scene every time I watch it. It's just so cool.
yeah, because Harley's like, why don't you just build something? You're a mechanic, right? Just build something. He's like, oh my god, like you totally hit it. Like and then he goes to build something. That's so great. Um, yeah, I think there's plenty of reason to gush about this movie, man. I don't, again, people can, it's all subjective, right? I mean, numbers say otherwise. if I can be real, the budget for this film was quite a bit higher than part two, which made a butt ton of money. Um, but yeah, this movie, a budget of 200 million, made 1.214 billion dollars.
Oof.
Dude, what? I mean, that's stark comparison to the two movies that came before it, because um, part two, you're looking at a budget of 170 to 200 million, so the budget's about right. But box office 623 million. But look at the jump from part two to part three. Like, that's insane how much more money part three made. I
Yeah.
mean, what?
Yeah, and I mean that's a testament to how far the MCU had come, and this
Right.
is well after they had made $1 billion with Avengers. Like they have proof of concept at this point. Um,
Yeah, good
so
call.
yeah, I mean this was the third, and at this point people are accustomed to Tony now. Like Tony is now a world star. He's a global star now. Like it's not
Yeah.
like before where they had to convince you on Iron Man. Like now
Yeah.
he's flagship character for at least the MCU.
Yeah. Good
Um,
call. Good call.
but yeah, yeah, I didn't know that it made that much, but when I really think about it, it's not that surprising. But yeah, every time I think about so many things I love about this movie, him calling the armor, and then the armor he's suiting up, and Rhodey's just like, yeah, okay, give me one. He's like, oh, they're only coded to me.
Why? So why do you leave Rhodey out of that? Do you think? Why leave him out?
I don't think he did it intentionally, but it just is funny how he was like, yeah.
No. Oh, of course, yeah, but why in the story? Why not have him suit up and help Tony? Did this have to be just Tony's character fighting this?
Well, you had to have him be the guy to save the president, and
Right, right.
um, have his scene with the president, like, hey, you look great in that suit, but I need that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, and it probably would have been too easy if you had. It would have been an easy cop out for him if he had Brody to fight alongside him with Aldrich.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the fight with Aldrich was very personal, and then of course we
Yeah.
got the culmination of stuff with Pepper too. So you kind of had to write Rhodey off to get there.
And once again, Phil, we had to put Tony at a disadvantage, which is so why Rhodey can't help him.
Yeah, man, I just love the fight though. Like him switching from armor to fight Aldrich is so cool.
So good.
Him
So
slashing
good.
through the armor. Um, I man, it's something about him. The way Aldrich was standing over him, and he's heating, and he's like, "You okay in there? You hot?
Yeah.
You in there? And
Yeah.
you're cooking in your turtle suit?" And then he goes to slash him, and then he slices his arm off. He's like, "Yeah, you think about that for a while."
What about when the Mark 42 shows up and Tony's like, the prodigal son returns, and you're like, it's gonna save the day, and then it runs into the ladder and just destroys itself, falls apart.
And then he goes, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny, man. But man, it just there's so many cool things of him catching Aldrich by surprise by having the armor suit up on him, and then
Oh,
destroying it. So cool.
yeah. I mean, dude, when he got up from that, I'm like, how do you kill this guy? Like, he got up from an exploding Iron Man armor. He got up from that. What?
Yeah, Aldrich coming out of rubble and going, "No more false faces. I'm the Mandarin," and then he just gets smacked across the head.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah. So good. Cause suddenly she can jump up in the air and do stuff. That's fine.
Yeah, because of the extremists.
Sure. So yeah, it's all right. I'll buy it. It's comic book science, and I think I've proven I'm a sucker for good comic book science. So it's okay. I may point it out. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, I did enjoy the way that she beat him, of her, putting her arm into the armor and using it to kill him.
Yes.
But I knew at the time when I watched it, I knew so many people that hated that part because they hated that she was the one to save the day. And I do think that would have made so much more sense if Maya was the bad guy. because of course we don't. Some people don't want to see a man kill a woman on screen. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but it was fine for what they did with it. I like the idea of the symbolism behind it that um, Pepper helped him leave his past behind. She was his
I was
future.
gonna say that. Yeah. Like Tony had such a hard time dealing with his past, his demons chasing him and coming back to haunt him. And she was the one to close the door on it for him. Like, look, I'll help you get past it. Yeah. I can get down with that. That makes sense. Um, yeah, you can kind of feel that things were changed up maybe midstream. It does feel that way. But I didn't really bump into it too much, to be honest with you.
No, not none of
Um,
it took me out of the movie, but it's one of those things. Once you notice it, it's hard to unsee it.
mhm.
Um, but that's just we're privy to more information than we ever have. Years ago I probably wouldn't have known that tidbit.
And we've talked about this before because we've done the Captain America trilogy. Spoiler alert, kids! If you don't know that, we've done that here. It's in the pipeline somewhere. I promise you. Um, yeah, I think your take isn't your take that Cap had the better trilogy versus Iron Man.
Yeah, I still believe that the Captain America trilogy is the best MCU trilogy. It's possibly the best comic book trilogy, honestly.
Mm,
I mean, well, now that we have Spider-Man, that there's close competition with the Homecoming
yeah,
trilogy, but I still think it's Cap for my money.
yeah. It's hard to argue that. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed Iron Man 3. I love watching these movies again. It's so much fun to go back and relive this stuff and uh, yeah, it's just I don't know. A lot of these movies just feel like instant classics to me. Like the minute I watch it, I just think, oh my god, they did it again. How do they keep? It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing how they continue. Man, I sound like such a shill, but like, right?
Uh,
Because I'm so in the bag. But man, how do they keep doing this right? And it's never the same creative team. I mean, Feige, man, is the godfather of this stuff, dude, isn't he?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Uh, I it because they have had missteps here and there, but
Sure.
I think that they showed the most growing pains with this trilogy, and I think that's why Iron Man 2 kind of suffered more than some of the other trilogy's second movie did. 'Cause I feel like they're getting it together by the second movie on a lot of trilogies, other than
Mm.
probably like Dark World. I mean, I know that that's an unpopular one, um, but yeah, it does feel like um, I would have really liked to have seen another Shane Black directed Iron Man movie.
Mm.
Um, I'm not mad that we didn't get another one, but if you would have offered it at the time after Iron Man 3 came out, I would have been all for Iron Man 4 directed by Shane Black.
Oh, I'd buy that. What do you bring Shane Black back for? What do you think he could do next? What would you hand him?
Oh, if you bring him back, I would absolutely let him direct a Captain America movie
Oh,
starring Winter Soldier. And you
mm.
get the buddy cop stuff that you get from Lethal Weapon. I think he would have a field day with that. And
Oh,
and,
I
and
agree.
you've got Anthony Mackie as the main star of it. I think he would kill that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like they already have a director in mind. I haven't kept up with much of the news for Captain America 4, but man, I would love Shane Black to come back and direct that.
I mean, I think that would work. I don't know why in the world it wouldn't work. Is there anything about this movie, and I know you're a big fan of it. I mean, as am I. It's a great movie, but is there anything about this movie that doesn't work for you? Or is everything pretty well clicking along for you?
Uh, there's some plot holes here and there. I feel like they could have done a better job of explaining Killian's plan at times because it was a little bit convoluted. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I think they should have done a better job of showing us what Extremis can do as well. Because in the comics, you get a better idea of why Extremis is such a technical advancement. Um, and they used Killian breathing fire and stuff as like a throwaway
Yeah.
joke here, but it was like the guy that had Extremis in a comic was much more dangerous, and he gave Tony a lot of problems in that fight. So I think they could have done a better job explaining Extremis and giving us more fights with the henchmen with Extremis.
Yeah. Well, good news. The next Cat movie does not have a director, apparently. If there is, they've not revealed it publicly. They've got a couple of screenwriters working, and one of the screenwriters worked on Falcon and Winter Soldier, the series, which is good.
Right. I know the showrunner is working on a script for it, but I didn't know if they had a director or not.
There's not one listed, so we'll see.
Yeah, I would be all for Shane Black if they wanted to bring him in.
Oh, I think that'd be great. Yeah, I do think that'd be great. Well, kids, that basically sort of sums it up for you. If you've never seen this film, Iron Man 3, I don't know what's going on in your life that you can't bring yourself to watch Iron Man 3. I feel bad for you. I feel sad for you, but do yourself a favor and go watch it. If you haven't watched it in a long time, I assure you it got better. Even if you loved it before, I think it ages really well. It's a good movie. It has a happy ending. The unfortunate happy ending Tony never got, unfortunately for us as fans. But I think it's definitely worth your time. Phil, let's take this thing home, my friend. Give me your last word on Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I am here to die on this hill that Iron Man 3 is the best Iron Man movie. I'm sorry if you guys listen to this and you want to seek me out on Twitter to argue me on this. I will argue it because I've argued this with many people, but it's the best Iron Man movie. Of course, that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but I will take that debate. I will die on this hill.
Yes.
No, but in all seriousness, I really love this movie, man. I don't care how many times I watch it. It's just something about him going and standing over the cliff and throwing the repulsor out into the water and leaving with the droids and everything, and then it cuts. He does the monologue before. He's like, "I am Iron Man," and then it cuts to the ending credits, and the ending credits is just so great. I don't know, man. It's just so much about this movie.
I love those credits.
I love it. I love the song that plays over the credits. I love it, man. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just me. I love this movie.
Hey, I mentioned Bebop. You tell me that ending credit sequence doesn't feel like the beginning of Cowboy Bebop.
It does.
The music, the cutscenes, yeah.
I love it, man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the ending. The ending, I'll say this about Marvel. Marvel goes out of their way to nail the ending credits of these films. And sometimes it's an afterthought because you're like, oh, what a great movie. You're sitting there with your buddies talking. But if you pay attention, these edit credits of some of these films are freaking great.
Oh, man, the ending credits to Black Panther is beautiful.
Oh, it is. Yeah, for sure.
The other one I pop for is the ending credits and like the graphics and stuff they have for the end of Avengers, where they're showing like all of like the shield and everything. It's great.
Yes, so good. The end game credits to end game is just freaking there. It's like Picasso, man. It's just a work of art. The whole thing is beautiful. By the way, kids, send your hate mail to Phil DL616 on Twitter. Phil's ready. Phil wants the smoke. So there you go. Bring your hate. He does not run from your hate, folks. So there you go. Yeah, there you have it, folks. What a great movie. Again, we highly endorse it here on the 6M. Stay tuned, folks. Much more Marvel to come. Much more other stuff to come as well. Yeah, again, enjoyed this movie. Really, really good, fun movie to watch. It hits all the right chords for me personally, as it does for Phil. So there you have it, folks. Until next time. That is Iron Man 3. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.